Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Reel Debaters podcast. I am Michael Petrow. Hello, listener. This week on the show, it's back-to-back special features for you. This one features costume designer Quita Alfred from the Oscar-nominated film Women Talking. We get to talk about everything that went into designing the costumes for all the characters, and not an easy film to make. So we have some time dedicated to researching this and getting authentic with it and what the Mennonite community felt as she approached them and wanted to represent them as best she could on screen. So that's who's on the show for you this week, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again, Quita. We, in all sincerity, great conversation. Thank you for educating me on stuff and talking to me about the film, because I'm a dude and I think every dude should see this film. And yeah, it's just fantastic of you. So thank you again. Besides that, April 27th, movie trivia with the Reel Debaters podcast, live from the Little Brown Jug, 336 William Avenue, 7 to 9 p.m. Tickets are on sale right now on Eventbrite, eventbrite.ca, Eventbrite app, however you buy your shit. The Reel Debaters trivia, just type it in. Tickets are $5, limited to 60 people. It's going to be an intimate affair, delicious beer, movie trivia, and movie trivia that your grandma could do. This is like general movie knowledge stuff. We've got a meeting coming up the next few weeks to plan the questions, and this is going to be stuff that is in pop culture, is well known. We're not here to trick you. We're not here to embarrass you. We're here to send you off to the movies, because those are the prizes for the winning teams. Teams of 4 max. We're going to make it a challenge somehow. And yeah, 7 to 9 p.m., April 27th, Little Brown Jug, 336 William Avenue. Don't miss out and hear about it from somebody else and be like, these guys are so much fun to laugh at. And they gave me free movie passes, and I drank delicious beer, and it was fun. That sounds like a fun time, right? I'm rambling. That's all I got for you this week. Quita, again, she's going to blow your mind. I will cue that reel, and you enjoy the show.
Let's tidy up this tangle of film by putting it on a reel. Here is a motion picture film, 1,000 feet, 16,000 separate photographs.
Welcome, everyone, to the official space section of the chart.
The truth! You can't handle the truth!
Sir, you're out of order.
Out of order. I show you out of order.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Reel Debaters podcast. Welcome back to the show. Hello, listener. It's just me today. I've got a lovely interview planned for you. So graciously, she said yes. I got to talk to Quita Alfred from Women Talking, the costume designer. After seeing this movie and realizing that she was from Manitoba, I was like, I have to get my hands on her. So hello, Quita. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm very well, Michael. Nice to see you.
I'm
excited to do this.
Me too. As soon as I saw this film, I was like, I must. These kinds of stories really resonate with me lately, where it's just simply based on some dialogue and a really good story. And then all of the work around it has to be immaculate. And watching you create the costumes in this, I mean, I was just absolutely blown away. So let's start with the big fat question, first of all. How'd you get involved? How'd this come across your radar?
Very serendipitously. I've known Sarah Pauly for over 30 years.
Oh.
Because I was the assistant costume designer on the road to Avonlea many years ago, when it was at its height. And then we lost touch. Sarah was still very young when the film, or when the series ended, and I went off to do other projects and travel the world and do all sorts of things like that. And so from afar, I watched her bloom into the wonderful activist, outspoken, talented artist, director, mother, feminist that she is, but never with any contact.
Sure.
And then fast forward 32, 34 years, I received an email from a producer that I had worked for several times, but not as a designer, Lynn Lucibello, who was our Toronto producer, sent me an email saying, "What are you doing?" And I thought, I haven't heard from Lynn in years. So I was curious. We had a phone call. She said, Sarah Pauly and I were sitting in my office going through a list of available costume designers in Toronto, and your name came up. And I made the face that I'm making now of complete disbelief, because I hadn't heard from Sarah in years, and nor had I even heard from Lynn. And sure enough, they were working together on what I then found out was an adaptation of a Miriam Toews novel, which is when my brain hit the back wall, because Miriam's my favorite author. And never mind the Manitoba connection there. And that was conversation was the beginning of this amazing wonder. I've got to stop using the word amazing, but it is really one of the only things that describes this experience. It was so serendipitous and so wonderful that for so many reasons, I got back in contact with Sarah. I got to work with her amazing brain, which she had even as a child. So to see it in full force was
You knew it was coming.
I knew it was coming. Anybody could see it was coming. She's a brilliant human being.
I grew up watching Rotavonlea. I mean, those are some CBC days that, like, she's like, if I'm going to really remember my upbringing, Rotavonlea, Littlest Hobo, Raccoons, like that whole CBC programming slot just lives inside of my brain.
It was the glory days, I think, wasn't it?
It was the Wild West of good CBC programming.
Yeah, I agree. So that was the start of it. And then finally, when my disbelief was taken care of. Sarah and I finally had a Zoom meeting. There were tears. We hadn't seen each other in 30 years. It was very emotional. And I was sitting where I am right now. I'm looking up as I look out my living room window from my office here. And I said, you know, I'm in Winnipeg, right? And she said, no. I said, you know, I'm from Winnipeg, right? And she said, no. I said, you know, I'm looking at my neighbor Harold Friesen's house right now. I mean, Harold will probably kill me for saying that, but I can see Harold and Kathy's house right here. Okay. I said, I am in Mennonite country. I grew up in Mennonite country. I'm certainly not Mennonite, but
adjacent.
Mennonite adjacent, exactly. And she had no idea that I was even from here. And I said, so this was in January, and we were scheduled to. I didn't even really have the job at this point, but
January of 2020.
Yeah. Pardon?
January of 2020?
2021.
2021, okay.
Yeah. And so we weren't scheduled to start prep even till May, I think. Okay. I said, if you let me start early before I come back to Toronto, I live in both places. I said, I can get you what I hope to be everything we will need for this film. I said, I'm looking south right now, like Steinbeck is 45 minutes in that direction. Miriam's
the belt.
And it just, so the synchronicity of that was incredible. And that just happened at every single turn on this project. People coming back together, people who hadn't done a certain thing for 20 years suddenly met the person that reconnected them with. Like, it was so wonderful in that respect, and so meant to be. And
really sounds like it.
Yeah, it was ridiculous and wonderful. And none of us want it to ever be any other way again, because it was such a wonderful experience. So through Lynn's help, Lynn Lucibello and Dee Dee Gardner, our producer from Plan B, and MGM, the studio, they allowed me to start my research early, because I was in the thick of it here. And which is very, I won't say it's very unusual, but we weren't a huge budget movie. And unless you're on something, really big where you get a year and a half of research, it's unusual to be granted the luxury of having a long research period. But they made that happen for me. And in return, I went down a very deep rabbit hole about a culture that I was familiar with, of course, growing up in Winnipeg. Many of us, most of us, I would say, are familiar with Mennonite culture through friends, through family, through teachers, through colleagues. And my
wife is from Arborg.
There you go.
And I deal with about 17, 20 different colonies at work. Like, they're always in there. When I see them coming, I'm like, do you have chickens? Please bring chickens.
Please bring chickens and a couple flats of eggs.
Yes. You know their language.
Yeah. It was so. Where was I going? I'm blathering on about how the magnificence of all these connections. So they allowed me to research.
Yes.
And then I, in turn, through a colleague of mine that I love working with, who grew up in Portage, I said to her, are there still any colonies out near where your mom and dad live? And she said, let me check. And she called her mom. Her mom said, not so much, and they don't do much sewing or selling of things anymore, but let me put you in touch with Marianne Hildebrand in Winkler, who is one of my old colleagues. And my friend's mom and Marianne and my other consultant in Ontario, Esther Jansen, have all worked in social services, or again, social service adjacent industries. Industries, not the right word, but
I get what you're saying.
Jobs and organizations, and are modern Mennonites. My friend's mother was not, but she put me in touch with her ex-colleague, Marianne, and who in turn put me in touch with Esther Jansen, who is an old friend of hers from Winkler, but now lives in southwestern Ontario in St. Clements. And that's where I just rushed in the door from this afternoon, because my worlds collided, because Esther and Marianne were in the same town for the first time in, ages, and I could see them together. So they, to begin with, Marianne and Esther opened doors for me that I would never otherwise have had access to step through into the world.
I was going to say, like, it sounds like, meet a guy here on the corner at 2 a.m. and he'll take you and show you you really had, you got into the thick of it, where, a lot of people Google, or,
yes,
maybe they run into somebody or they read stuff, but like, you were welcomed into the community to put the community on screen. That's really cool.
It was really cool. And I've made what I hope to be lifelong friends in Marianne and Esther, and their graciousness and their generosity and their kindness allowed me to do the kind of research that I live for. They introduced me to people who shared their family histories with me. They introduced me to vendors who could provide what I needed. They introduced me to people who knew old techniques of making things, traditional Swiss Mennonite, old colony type of plain dress items. So without I call them my Menon angels, Marianne and Esther. I'm kind of on a high from seeing them together this afternoon, because they're such excellent humans.
I see it 3 or 4 times a week. So when things in the movies are in my life constantly, I've noticed that I've developed an eye, because I'm just watching more critically than I used to, where I'd be like, oh, Avengers, it makes me happy, right? Like I give more of a shit. And I looked on screen when I saw this stuff, and I was like, I feel like I'm at work. Like, it was so authentic.
That's a compliment. Thank you. I take that as a compliment.
Like, when I couldn't tell the difference. And when that happens, that's the uncanny valley, right? That's where you have done, you understood the assignment.
Thank you. Thank you so much for saying so, Michael. And that's because of Marianne and Esther and the Mennonite community, who welcomed me so warmly.
Can I ask a question about that?
Of course.
With this story being the story that it is, were you like, was there any pushback? Was there any fear? Like, was that ever part of having to get over? Because I mean, it's a story.
It was a very delicate process, and we started gently. We started very gently in that, because even Marianne and Esther, I think, were apprehensive about becoming involved. They're modern Mennonite women, as modern as I am, but of course have family and connections, as everyone does in Manitoba, it seems, to older ways of life and older, older ways of thinking.
Sure.
But their discretion was everything. And we discussed it very early on. I said, are you comfortable doing this with me? And it took them a while, bless them. And they were very honest about that too. And I tried to be as candid as I could. So we started by letting folks that we were talking to know that I was a costume designer. I was interested in studying plain dress, that I was amassing a collection of plain dress items, just like I would any other culture I was studying or researching. And we started there because, as we both know, being Manitobans, that Miriam's work is perceived differently in different communities.
Yeah, no, you're very right. She ruffle feathers, or she can make you swoon.
Yes,
It's this or
yeah,
that. Yeah.
I agree. And so we started slowly, and my men and angels were the souls of discretion, and because they had their own community at heart, to protect as well, of course. And as we all learned to trust each other, uh, doors were opened, and we found ways to involve more traditional thinkers in what we were doing, and while respecting their views and their communities. And as was my experience even before delving this deep into the Mennonite culture, my experience with my Mennonite friends and colleagues, and my surface knowledge of the community had always been one of generosity and kindness and humor and service. And by service, I mean helpfulness to others. And that experience only grew exponentially once I started to meet the people that I met, and engage with artists and sewers and vendors who were going to provide things for me. And it's, Michael, this whole project has been so exceptional for so many people in what it produced, for one thing, but individually and personally for all of us. It has changed our lives in so many ways, positive ways. So the fact that I got to learn more about a culture that I thought I knew has been at the heart of my best moments of this experience.
Well, and like that's subject matter aside, I think you want all of those coming from an outsider when you hear about how the magic of the story infects the crew and the people who become involved in it. Like,
Yeah.
I equate it to things, and I mean, excuse me, but I'll make sense. The filming of Jaws and how the community in the town got involved in filming because it got delayed so much because they couldn't get Bruce into the water. So it starts to have this magical aspect that off the page is infecting you and how you're doing it, and the story of discretion and honesty. Those are themes in the film. So when those worlds collide, those are the dream productions from my outside perspective.
I entirely agree with you.
Hey.
And yay. There were so many places and so many reasons that it could have gone sideways too, like starting with preconceived notions and judgment that many of us have taught, and every culture has, or every specific group has their judgments of.
We all got our sins.
Of everybody else. Yeah, whether we admit it or not. You try as you may. We all have our own experiences and we compare them to others. But Sarah, in leading us through this whole process, is such a wonderful collaborator and a brilliant mind and a kind human being. So she went out of her way to put together a team of people who are like-minded and like-hearted, I would also say. And
her interviews about all you guys are just collaborative and uplifting and fun and just all these lovely descriptors. And I read the press a lot, and I was like, this 8 to 10 hour day, first of all, blew my mind.
Yeah.
That's a big risk.
It's very old-fashioned.
It is.
It's very old-fashioned, and I think that because of the success of this film, we should all remember that it used to be perfectly fine and everyone was able to do that. It just involves something that does virtually never happens in the film industry anymore, and it's called planning.
Yeah, I'm in construction.
Yeah. We used
That's
to
like
get a
friends of mice and men.
yeah. At Avonlea, we did 8 to 10 hour days,
Really?
and it was a show full of kids.
Oh, even Wranglers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
And education rules,
kid photo
union. Yeah,
double, blah blah blah, union
yeah.
rules. Exactly. It was a beautiful show. It was nice, and we all went home at the end of the day.
You're not resentful. You're not exhausted. You're not crabby for the next day. You've got some rest. You can come back. You can
Exactly.
kick it in the ass again. And like, yeah, it really is down to planning. And I mean, as one, I love a one room. Me and Mark on the show love a one room film. We
Yeah,
love it because you're like, okay, here we go. It's all in the acting. There's nothing to take our mind off of what's happening here. And I was into this as soon as, because it gave me these 12 Angry Men vibes, but from
that's
the other
yes.
side
Sarah
of the
would
conversation.
appreciate that.
Okay, yes,
Yeah,
she nails it in that. And but I just the detail and all of like, when you hear all the behind the scenes stuff, and then you get to apply it and see how it all worked. I'm like, wow, this is even more impressive knowing that you didn't get the extra 8 hours into the twilight of the evening to keep going, right? And it looks as good as if you did.
yes, exactly. And much of it, I mean, from that end of things, much of it was light dependent for us, and uh, like God light, magic hour light
Lots
dependent.
of it, yeah, I would imagine.
Yes, some of which we recreated
Sure.
in the studio, but mostly and most importantly, the reasons, and this again is my subjective opinion, but I am also incorporating some of Sarah's thoughts as well, is that she wanted to, after not having made a film for so many years, I think it was 10 years since she'd made a film. She's now at that point had 3 kids under 10, and she wanted to see them and didn't want to sacrifice her real life for a film, as those of us who have done it
Yeah, I know. I get it.
often. And it was really as simple as that. And with Frances McDormand was also one of our producers with her company Hearsay, Dee Dee Gardner, Sarah, I am a mother. All of us are mothers. The men involved in our lives and in our crew were parents for the most part. And I've heard Sarah say in interviews, no, the men wanted to see their kids too. It's not just a big, you know,
I get it.
estrogen
Yeah,
fest. That's a normal loving thing
that's the
that
bullshit
all
of the
parents
media.
should want to go home and be able to spend time with their kids and
Totally.
still have a satisfying career.
Oh, you shouldn't. I mean, sacrificing everything for art. I mean, that we're well beyond that now, right?
Yeah, that's really boring.
It is.
Really boring.
Uh,
So everybody held that as the first and highest goal, was to have an excellent experience making this film. And as it turned out, the excellent experience made for an excellent film and an excellent summer and excellent friendships and excellent coincidences. So the experience of it, I've heard Sarah talk of a director that she used to work with who spoke of that to her too, is that we're all here together. We're all trying to achieve the same goal. Why don't we also have a nice time doing that?
oh, don't
And
say that.
to this person, it was almost more important than the result of the film. But as it turns out, that excellent experience is reflected in the art that is the result. So it was a prime focus, the working environment. And Sarah is a wonderful collaborator, and she's such a brilliant mind and confident in her own opinions, but also in her skill, that she is wide open to collaboration. She's wide open to other opinions that will add to the whole. And she is not, as many directors specifically, but all others in film, she's not jealous of her territory or her baby or her product. She welcomes brilliant ideas from everyone. She doesn't say yes to all of them, but she considers all of them, absolutely, and then if she decides that her idea is the best, then that's what we go with, and everybody's happy. Everybody's been listened to. Everybody feels heard. Everybody has been respected. That's a huge word for this production as well. Respect. I have rarely ever been as respected and listened to as I was on this, from all levels, from the producers, from the studios, from the actors, the crew. I was working with people I've worked with for years, and I had a wonderful time doing that. So I had their support, but respect was a huge part of this project. And go ahead.
It's everywhere. I mean, these are the things that just make masterpieces, that make us go, this one's gonna, like I said in my review, it should be taught in school. It's one of those films. It should be part of mandated education. And as amazing as it is to hear how amazing it was to make this movie and all the collaboration. Let's talk about you for a second. So I know that in period piece movies, which, my God, was I shocked when I found out what timeline it was. Like when that little nugget gets dropped, I'm like, we're here. Okay.
That's exactly what it was meant to do. I'm glad you mentioned. Yeah.
I looked over at my wife, Shauna, and she's like, you didn't know? And I was like, I'm a fucking idiot. I'm sorry. I was so caught up in what you created in the costumes that it took me out of the fact that this could be anywhere near our timeline. But what I want to know is, was everything ground up, or could you find stuff? Could you rent stuff? Like, what was the split workload between maybe finding some pieces from some different costume agencies and renting, or did you build everything stitch, needle, thread, bottom to top?
For the principals, we did. For the women and for Ben in the hayloft, we did. But what we did otherwise, because it's such a specific look, Russian Mennonite plain dress, and plain dress means a way of living and a way of dressing. It doesn't just mean a dress that is plain and does not have buttons. Plain dress is a term that refers to a faith-based way of presenting yourself to the world that tries its best to negate pridefulness or ostentation and remind the wearer of their place in their theology, in their world.
It's me saying, hey world, there's a lot going on here, and this is who I am. You stand.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And that other stuff is more important than me and my lipstick and my earrings and the me.
Yeah.
So because it's so specific, there wasn't a lot of it that we could rent, which we normally do even though it's not a period piece, in something that's not from the mall, you would rent. But we built after the Men and Angels had helped me scour every thrift store in southern Manitoba, every yard sale, everything. I have 531, I think it is the final total, real Russian Mennonite dresses in Rubbermaid bins. I have 200 and something pair of Schlaubecksen, which are the men's overalls. I have 200 pairs of cowboy boots from every thrift store in the country. I have it all. Almost all of it was my stock in the end that I had accumulated through Marianne's help and Esther's help.
Wow.
So I've got this astonishing collection now of Swiss Mennonite clothing. So we then, for initial fittings, after discussion with Sarah, of course.
Can I stop you there? Because I want to ask.
Of course.
How did we decide page to screen each character's outfit? Because you are very good at letting us know through these tiny little things, like the more reserved religious outfit with more of a head covering versus less of a head covering and more modern. Like everybody, their costume defined who they were at the time, their acting defined who they were in the story, and their emotion defined what they were going through. And you've got them nailed to a T. So I'm really curious how that came to be.
Thank you for noticing. It was a lovely process of many things. first of all, out of the respect for the help that I had been given by the Mennonite community, and out of respect for the fact that I grew up adjacent to this community, and any representation of the Mennonite faith represented, Orthodox, fundamentalist or not, represented my friends. So it was really, really important that I get it right. There was no reason for us, Sarah and I decided to take cinematic license with this, and out of respect for Miriam's work as well.
Sure,
There was no reason to make
Dress
them
it up.
really, to make them Little House on the Prairie-ish, because
Yeah.
that was not the truth. So, and because their plain dress has so few flourishes,
Options.
the whole reason is lack of flourishes, the whole premise of it. We had very small, narrow parameters within which to work to describe character, or to subconsciously even suggest things. So we used color, we used scale of pattern, I keep doing this when I talk about those kind of things, because really on the women's bodices,
Yeah, we're only seeing
it's the only place they're different.
Yeah.
Churches have divided in the Mennonite faith over whether women should be allowed to have buttons on the outside of their dresses.
Wow.
So that level of conservatism is what conservatism, I'm not sure what the English word is there, as though I speak any other language. But those were the levels of narrowness that we were dealing with.
Yeah, narrow is a perfect word.
So Sarah and I had our conversations, and then Luc Montpellier and Sarah and I had our conversations about the color palette, which is, people have strong opinions about the palette on this film, but it was for very specific reasons, to set us in a specific, I will start with mood, but I will also sort of say time, because Sarah wanted us
time worked.
Yeah, to come out of a time. We
Yes.
wanted that shock value of, oh my goodness, this is a modern film. It's not period. But it was to set a tone of this otherworldliness, of that world existing in a bigger modern world. So we had our discussions, and then another huge luxury that I was afforded on this project is to have time with each actor. And because it was COVID, that was Zoom time. So I was allowed to have many conversations.
You and Jesse, you and Rooney, you and Flora.
Every one of them, yes.
Oh, my word.
So we talked about, generally how it worked was I gave them my research. I showed them my presentation I had shown to the producers and to Sarah. I had sent them in advance, I'd sent them information and links to investigate and all kinds of stuff, my rabbit hole results of research.
Here's my Bible from the Menno Angels.
Exactly. Exactly. And then we discussed one-on-one what I said, here are the rules. Let me know how you'd like to break them, essentially. But by the way, you can't break them, is really what I said to them. So
very clever.
So they, with the luxury of this conversation, we pulled out details that we wanted to emphasize or de-emphasize, whether it was body posture or body shape. For example, none of our women have given birth to 10 or 15 children. None of our actors have had that personal experience in their life. And as a woman, the women that are listening to this will know that after one baby, never mind after a dozen of them, it takes a toll on your body, and you hold yourself a certain way. You hold trauma a very certain, many different ways, but each one has a specific way of a physical manifestation of the trauma that has happened to them.
Yes.
Many of them are more of a, what we would call a conventional Hollywood size compared to the reality of women that have many children and live on farms and do backbreaking work all day. So we use subtle things like that to augment or restrict that are not ever seen on camera. that are under
Talk
their.
about function of the outfit to give the performance for the
Yes. And so there are lots of secrets going on underneath that nobody, that I'm not going to reveal, but I will
Sure.
tell
No, no,
you
no. You never magician
this.
never reveals their secrets.
Yeah. But not only that, the reaction to the actual premise of wearing a polyester dress all day was something that every one of the actors used, whether they loved them or hated them. Each of them, being the amazing professionals that they are, used their reaction and put that into their character. So try and explain to a top-notch, like our cast was mind-blowing, the level of talent and experience that was involved. And so try telling a bunch of people like that, oh, and by the way, you're going to be in a long sleeve, 3/4 length, double layer polyester dress in 38 degrees for 8 weeks. Have at her. Have fun. Tell me how that goes for you. So there was a huge range of emotions that went with that. As I said, each of the actors used that beautifully. Then where was I? Just had something. Oh, and then we used, for example, Marieke, Jessie Buckley's character.
Yes.
Who is struggling with so much that is very tightly tamped down. She's barely hanging on as a human, as a woman.
Yeah. She's her, and you see it slip, like it just starts to bleed out of her throughout the film.
Yes.
To the point where her and Rooney's character at the end, Shalom. I'm sorry, I can't.
Salome. A lot of people would say Salome, but it's pronounced Salome in some Mennonite cultures and in our film. So for her, I used very little detail. Like she didn't have time for detail for the few fripperies that would be allowed to a Russian Mennonite old colony woman in her choice of ways to individualize herself. She didn't even have time for that. She had 2 little pleats. The fabric that was Jessie's dress that was made of was one of the first I chose, and it instantly spoke to me of murky water and troubled waters and more under the surface. So we used that. It wasn't regular, it wasn't grounded, it wasn't rhythmic.
Oh man, I love this. When you start getting artistic with the function of stuff, I love the upcycle. I love the it's like it's a 2-for-1. There's more happening than you see. Like I think all of that is just so fucking cool.
Thank you. And it was so much fun. That's the kind of stuff I like to do. I mean, Don't get me wrong, I love a sequin and a ball gown.
Sure.
But this kind of often artists will say there is beauty in restriction and there is creativity in being restricted. You have to find
the self-editing that a costume designer, I imagine, goes through, because you get to bring the thing alive that makes the character get that much the actor get that much closer to the character. So to have to edit and restrain and change your whole thought process, because your job is not to plain dress. But your job was to plain dress this.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's almost the opposite of what a costume designer is expected to do.
Do these big things, make these huge swatches, create color and atmosphere with cloth and fabric. But here, none of that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me reset my
Take all of that and throw it away and then use polyester. So that I won't speak for the actors, of course, but I can speak about my interaction with them. And once they wrapped their head around the fact that I wasn't kidding, that this is what you're going to look like, their creativity went mad as well. And we worked together in really great ways. And I explained the ways that I wanted to subtly differentiate the families, for example, because when I read Miriam's book, I was like, wait, I literally had a pen. It's like, who? Okay, this one belongs to this. And in the
Venn diagram of like trying to figure out whose child and daughter
who belonged to who. Yeah, I did. And I think Miriam's book, actually, there is what do you call it? Not a cheat sheet, but an index.
An index.
Who belongs to.
These are the Hofers. These are the so on and so forth.
Yeah, we had the Friesens, the Lowens, and the Jansons. Is Scarface Francis's character. So I explained what I wanted to do to that way to them, in that, for example, the Friesens I wanted, because their reactions to my subjective opinion were more intellect than emotion. I wanted more repetitive patterns, forward moving lines, boldly, as bold as we could be, outspoken
Boldly
scale
going where
pattern.
no Mennonite woman has gone before with their dress.
Yeah. And exactly. Well, we didn't have, like lycra sparkle or anything,
Sure, yeah.
stripes made into a plain dress, but we did what we could. And Micheal, for example, Michelle McDonald's character, it is literally quite a character. She's outspoken. She's trying her best to keep herself contained in this world that is her life. So she had big patterns. Sarah and I just fell in love with that piece of fabric. That's a lot of why it made it into the film too.
Yeah,
but it was big and expressive for a character like hers. Frances's Scarface, who was so restricted in her thought and restricted in her I won't say in her faith, because all of the faith is the one thing that's very beautifully steadfast,
non-negotiable.
Yes, exactly, in their expressions of their faith, I will say.
Yeah.
For her character, because her opinion was so immovable, what came to mind to me were things like rust and dried blood and things that had remained the same for a very long time and had been calcified almost into place.
Yeah, like we're not going anywhere. We're stained this way.
Yeah, so it would be really hard to undo that rusty gate, that, crusty dried blood cloth from whatever has happened in the past.
Yeah, it's there. It's a reminder. It's not. It's part of what it is now.
Yes. And whereas the Friesens, Greta, Sheila McCarthy, and Jesse's character, Marieke, and Little Auche, Kate Hallett, and Micheal, their reactions to me were more emotional than and I won't say than intellectual, and I don't mean this as a judgment comparison. I mean it as a simple difference in methods.
Yes.
Both are valid, and both are I'm only using two, so I say both rather than all, but both are completely valid ways of dealing with their circumstance. So for them, in the emotional expression of things, I chose less repetitive patterns, less defined, with like the murkiness of Marieke's, the wild abandon of the flourishes of Micheal's dress, and in Auche, the small but a little bit confusing pattern on her, still in the greens, and I chose more naturalistic colors for the seasons, greens and browns, and
young one, right? So,
whereas I mean, for the low, those are the low ones, and the Friesens were more pure colors.
Where are we now? No, I'm just kidding.
I know. See, that's why I had a pen. Yeah. And then poor Ben as the lone man, the fox in the hen house there. We stuck to tradition there, but with his character, what I did get to do was use a lot of vintage stuff, not just used clothing that I had bought at yard sales, but softened vintage shirts that to me spoke of his gentleness and his vulnerability. And where we see him most, he's in the very traditional plaid, which I'm sure in your work you've seen men dressed like that every day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even the men are regimented by plain dress.
Yes. No. Suspenders, flannel. The hat is very.
Yep.
It's not a fedora. What is? I'm not a hat man.
Well, cowboy hats mostly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're a cowboy hat shape. Fedora is close to what, especially in Manitoba, and I think the Hutterite men wear more of a sort of trilby or a fedora, like a fedora felt. They often wear felt. In the community that we were suggesting, it's usually a straw cowboy hat style. We had lots and lots of them. And then there were, in the original, what we shot, there were a lot more men. And we saw more of them even. So we had, as I said, hundreds and hundreds of pieces for them too. But
Everybody who shows up gets an outfit, but not everybody who got an outfit got on camera. So I mean, yeah,
exactly.
there's a lot more work that you're doing than we're getting to see, because some of
Yeah.
those exterior shots in the beginning where there's the other men involved, and then at the end when all the families are getting together, like that,
Yes.
we're that you get busy.
Yeah. And most of the background, all of the background, actually, we didn't build any. We built, but well, by build I mean like we made overalls for
Sure.
to fill in spaces of sizes we didn't have. But all of the women are in real Mennonite, bought from Mennonite families dresses. All of the kids are in the real thing. All of the men are in either real things bought from real families or things bought at Mennonite stores and met through Mennonite vendors. So I'm trying to think if anywhere there was a license that we took. Not on the outside.
Sure.
Underneath we did.
Yeah.
But not on the outside.
The bones need to be a certain way to make it make sense, but what we see, what we experience, authentic is all hell, Quita. Like it was.
Thank you.
Shauna leaned over to me and she was like, because she just didn't think as a man, the things I experienced in that film that made me question things. I really hope that you can pass along to Sarah that like I got it, I heard her, like the things that made me want to crawl out of my skin, just for being a man in general. The disgust that I came out of this film with in my gut was astounding, and I'm like, good that happened, and I'm like, we should all be more Ben Winshaws. We should all be more of his character. Just shut up and listen and take notes, man. That's that, and that was such a beautiful euphemism, like him just sitting there taking notes. Like if you didn't pick up on that, right, then you really were not watching. What was a day like on set for you? Like, how is there a lot of alterations? Like, take us through a day dressing everybody and what it was like getting.
Well, with a cast that size and that many background, the alterations are done long before.
Okay.
Everyone was fit and processed before. But for the background team, the day started very early, and I had to be there to establish both background performers and principals. So it started at 1:30 in the morning with me having McDonald's drive-through with my kid because I hadn't seen him for hours, and we would stay up, we'd go for breakfast, we'd have these existential talks. I'd drop him off at home and I'd get in the highway to get up to the farm, which I was a complete 360 of me driving up at 4 a.m. to the farm on Avonlea, which was actually about 5 kilometers away from where we shot this.
Oh, wow.
Full circle. Whole lot of full circle there. So very early mornings, because we wanted so many beauty shots, and the sunrises were absolutely spectacular. The farm was so beautiful, and the humming and hawing.
Those shots are unbelievable. Like she really wanted to let you know that this was Ontario, right? Shot in Ontario?
Yes, just north of Pickering, Ontario.
Perfect.
Which is sort of 45 minutes east of Toronto.
Okay.
And east and northeast, I think they call that. And Luke's attention to and the way he caught the atmosphere of where we were was just so beautiful. So all of that early morningness, whether it was to dress 120 extras or to catch the sunrise, was all paid back when we would just stop often. What is happening right now? Look at the sky. Everybody take, whether it was 10 seconds or 2 minutes, to look where we are right now and remember that and use it all day.
Sure.
So that was usually the start of our days. And then the principal cast would come in also very early because some of them had a lot of hair work to do, for example. And those dresses we built based on my designs through my research of the original style that we had, of which we had bought so many. The principals had, even though they spend most of the movie in what looks to be one dress, they had 8 of them because polyester and because 38 degrees and because
You're gonna sweat.
a whole movie in one room.
Yeah.
So, and my team in the office, in the sewing room, I had the most amazing team. They had to recreate flower by flower exact duplicates of those things because it's meant to look like, it's got to look like the same dress. Even if it gets sweaty, you have to change it out after lunch. It's 100 degrees. Somebody spills something. It's like, people talk about Bruce Willis and Die Hard in that tank top. It's like, that wasn't that tank top. It was those 300 tank tops in various stages. And that's the truth.
I just learned that recently. I was like, oh, they make one of everything. And people are like, are you fucking nuts? No, we make 20 of everything.
Yeah. So depending on, we had more stunts in the film that a lot of which didn't make it in, but so we had to have 1 million to look like one. To hyperbolize a bit. So we would get everybody dressed, we'd get them then down to set, and the day would begin. And thankfully, because so much of it was one script day, there weren't a lot of running back to the trailer all day long. To some shows you've got one character and 8 changes, which if you're working on a TV show is torturous because you've got 13 seconds to do that. If you're, depending on how good your ADs are, they don't schedule 6 changes in one day because it takes forever to change. And we had no hair changes. We had no makeup changes because there virtually was no makeup. Our makeup team did an amazing job of making people look like they had no makeup on, which again is something that looks simple, but isn't.
No.
Maintaining
for lighting and shade,
exactly,
and shadow,
and heat and all of that. Yeah.
So,
and then we would shoot, going from place to place on the farm, which was an atmosphere that Peter Costco and his team, Peter, our production designer, built the entire farm. There were no roads. There was no schoolhouse. There was no Marique's house. There was no wash house. There was no Scarface's house. Those are all created. The barn is there, and there is a house on the Burkholder. I just remembered the name of the family, I think, that owns the farm. I was speaking with Marianne and Esther this afternoon, who are also Mennonite, ironically. Owns the farm. There's a Victorian-looking house on the property, but it wasn't shown. Peter and his team built that whole town, that village. So we would dustily hike from one area to the other. Sometimes we would have vehicles to take us through because 38-degree heat, it was a lot.
Pass out halfway there in a polyester dress.
Yeah, and polyester and socks and sandals.
You're evil.
Yes. There are a number of opinions.
You're evil for your art.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the other end of things, some of the actors just loved it. They felt it was freeing, that ridiculous lack of pretense and ostentation. They found it freeing to just kind of be able to sit down on a dusty road in a polyester dress, get up and wipe your backside off, and it looks exactly like it did, when you sat down. So the polyester's not for nothing.
No, it does have function beyond.
It does in real life, and in real life to the people on the colony, they make their choices for practical reasons and for reasons of access, what they have access to.
I want to extend to you, as we were sitting there last night, me and Ian, I want to say that I think it's absolutely fucking atrocious that you're not nominated for Best Costume.
Thank you. But thank you for saying so.
I know you well enough already to know that it doesn't matter, but it's nice to be nominated. I mean, I get all that stuff, but I think in the world right now of superhero costumes and all that stuff, we're getting lost in how accurate and plain but beautiful at the same time it was. And we get lost in the glossy and the fancy and the shiny, and I'm looking at everything and I'm like, yeah, Black Panther Wakanda is my pick, but I'm like, why can't this be a bigger category?
Well, here, this will maybe make you feel a little better then, Michael, because I was not offended because because costume design is all those other things as well.
But it can be this, and I'm just saying, like, it should be sometimes. It shouldn't always be about, the biggest spectacle, which I feel, and that's not a bad way. It's just
Yeah.
with clothing and costume, you can get there without it being gaudy and weird and stuff, and the simplicity of this film and how accurate it is just a miss in my opinion. But that's me. You can go on.
Well, here's one of the most rewarding things for me, that this is the thing that I hope will make you feel a little better about that, is that the people, some of my biggest idols, the people I admire the most and whose work I respect, have contacted me personally to say the things that you just said. And that to me
way more
is so wonderful and so rewarding. When this weekend, when we were at the Designers Guild Awards, I was just blown away with the people who knew who I was and knew what I had done and explained to me in the words that I just explained to you, the work and how they had perceived that they could differentiate the characters and they could tell what I did with the scale. And I was just blown away. I guess I shouldn't have been, because the people who were talking to me knew their stuff. So it was the highest praise I could have received to, first of all, be nominated by my peers.
Yeah.
Second of all, to be so supported by my peers. I heard from several people with whom I've worked, but also who I had never met and whom I had admired, that I voted for you, I voted for you. So that was really, really wonderful. And, I spread the word. I told everybody I knew, and that was amazingly rewarding for me. That was the highest praise I could imagine.
You feel better.
Yeah,
and that I know means more to like an award is for us at home, right? Really. Yeah. But to know that, because I was going to say, what's it like knowing that you're in that category now? Like, you are in the same category as the best, at least. Like, what's that like?
It's exciting. It's exciting and overwhelming. But the best part of it, and the best part of this whole process of, award season it's a campaign. People know the reality of it now. People push hard. There's a whole team of people who push really hard for you, which is brilliant. But where was I going with that? The fact that people knew who I was and knew about the work and accepted me and welcomed me is what I was trying to say. This weekend was so amazing in the way that people I admire welcomed me so warmly into their company and into their worlds. I went the Sunday before the awards. Now that I'm in the 21st century, which I hadn't been up until about 3 months ago, as far as Instagram and all that I only stalked people on social media, right? I only had my stalker accounts. Yeah. But because of the wonderful support we've had from our PR team for this whole experience of award season and promotion, which has been another wonderful revelation to me, the support we had from so many people, I wanted to respect their work by sharing things about the film. And through doing that, I contacted Deborah Scott, for example, who designed Avatar and Titanic and Back to the Future and every famous movie you can name on 20 hands. Yeah. And I sent her, I commented on one of her pictures and she replied to me. I was like, what is happening right now? Deborah L. Scott just sent me an instant message,
my God is responding.
Exactly. And I expressed, admiration for the things that she had done and the pictures that were on her feed. And then she in turn complimented my work, which made my brain explode. And then we kept in contact and she said there might be a symposium the day before the awards. And because I said I would love to one day see her work in person, the Avatar stuff. She said, well, funny you should mention it. And then not only remembered to follow through and let me know that it was in fact happening, but then made sure that not only I, but also my team were invited to this fairly exclusive event, this masterclass she was giving. Then, besides being accommodated and welcomed, then came over to say hello and warmly welcomed. It was just so beautiful and so counter to what so many people think that level of work is, and that am finding more and more is where the excellence is. And it's a sign of excellence, is that openness to collaboration and to participation and to sharing of knowledge. And that has been just beautiful for me. Has been the biggest reward, besides having it with Sarah and our crew and learning so much more about what everybody does, and the departments that we don't often have direct contact with. For example, the editors, Chris Donson and Rosalind Kalu, our editors. I learned so much about their jobs. Besides that, it's such a beautiful way to work. Sharing and being open to more, that more is more, rather than that jealous
ego.
Ego. Yeah.
Our ego is what, honestly, our ego is what makes us the most animalistic, right? So if you can get out of your own, and I fall prey to it, if you can get out of the way of your own ego, then
we all do. Yeah.
And it's such a simple thing to say, but it's also like, okay, maybe it's my time to shut up, sit back, pay attention, learn a thing or two here, let someone else have, and no, that's a fucking beautiful story, Quita.
Thank you. It's a beautiful experience. I won't lie. I won't, gloss that over. It has been really, really amazing. My life has been changed by this experience. And I've worked in the industry for 35 plus years, I think it is now, and worked with big names, and, not always as a designer. I've worked on big crews. I've worked for a lot of the people that I ran into again last night, and to have them respect my work and be so kind as to express their opinions and their respect of it was really, really lovely. It's been such a great ride.
I hope it continues all the way to the Best Picture slot for you, because that's the crowning achievement in the industry. And man, would it be nice to see this win? It's nice to see a horse race once in a while.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
Like you watch enough, you track enough, you listen enough, what's coming up. But that Best Picture slot, there's a lot of good stuff there, and I think you guys are a sleeper. I honestly do. I'll be tuning in for sure. I would love to keep you for many, many more hours, but I do have other engagements, and this has been a blast. Thank you so much for. I
agree. Thank you for contacting me, Michael. Again, in true Manitoba fashion, 2 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
And I am all about the home team. I have just loved all of the support. Speaking of support, that we've had here here at home.
Yeah, if something is Manitoba rooted in some way, shape, or form, either you're from here, or you're here now, or you're working here, or you used to work here, and this was your launch pad. I love talking because it really isn't known. I tell people, I'm like, there's a big booming movie industry here in this province, and there's some really huge fucking talent. People are like, really?
Yeah.
Just Google. I don't have time to list it for you, but now listener knows that one of the best costume designers in North America is from our hometown. Her name's Quita Alfred, and she spent the last hour with us. So, listener, if this is your first time, we do other stuff. We debate, we converse, and we interview. If you want to support the show, the simplest way to do so, which is the freest way, is just click follow or like or subscribe. Whatever puts us in your podcast player every week, so you can hear stuff like this. Maybe Quita will come back and do another conversation.
I would love to do that. Anytime, Michael. Anytime. I'd love to.
Thank you so much. I have that on tape too. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm not kidding.
I know you are.
I love it. As you can tell, I love a chat, and even more so, I love a chat about this film or my film experience, over the years.
Maybe I'll bend your ear for American Gods next time, because I was really heartbroken that was canceled.
Yeah. Sure, I'd love to.
Okay, then there
Break
you
that
go.
down for sure.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Real Debaters Pod on Instagram and Twitter. That's REEL for the spelling. Real Debaters Podcast on Facebook and RD Podcast Shorts on YouTube, which is where you'll see clips of Quita once this airs. I have been Michael Petrow. Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye to everybody.
Bye, Quita. Thank you again.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies.